If you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now, along with the bell icon, so you can be notified whenever a new video is posted. And if you're already subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. And of course, be sure to give the video a like as well as share it on your social media. The white supremacists hate that. And now, the Sunday address. This is a subject that a lot of people have been talking about, and Whoopi Goldberg has weighed in on it, so I guess I should say something. Even though it's not necessarily an issue that concerns us, which is both the reason why I haven't talked about it and the reason why I'm going to talk about it. Now, as everybody has seen in all the news, Israel has begun hostilities against Iran because Benjamin Netanyahu desperately needs a distraction, and he's not the only one. Donald Trump ordered strikes on what he called Iranian nuclear sites. That's what the raison d'etre for all of this is. That's what the pretense is. Iran is only a couple of days away from getting a nuclear weapon. But the reality that everybody should recognize by now is none of that's true. These sites are actually civilian nuclear power sites. Iran doesn't have any nukes, and the Israelis have been lying through their teeth about it. And speaking of lies, the Orange Man's been lying about why he decided to get the U.S. involved in this fight by launching some airstrikes. The headlines have been brutal toward Trump the last few weeks. His own Republican allies have been wagging their fingers at him, and the White House's resident tech bro Elon Musk had that dust up with him. It's been a rough month for Trump, and it's not even over yet. So even though Trump claims that he's not a typical inside the Beltway DC politician, he's nonetheless done what every single politician has done whenever they have bad headlines they can't get rid of: start troubles abroad to distract from problems at home. The same way that Bill Clinton sent a missile strike into Sudan to distract America from the Monica Lewinsky scandal, Trump is doing the same thing. He claims that he's been a big success with this strike. It's been a huge success. Why, they've eliminated the threat of Iran having a nuclear arsenal. And yet at the same time, Trump is threatening to carry out more missile strikes. So I guess apparently Trump's strike couldn't have been that big a success if he feels like he has to do some follow-ups. And of course, the biggest problem in the room is Benjamin Netanyahu. That guy's been saying that Iran has been 2 months away from having a nuclear weapon since at least 1995. So why is it that the Israelis, particularly the Likud party, have been so hot and bothered about attacking Iran? Well, the reason is Israel wants to try to get their hands on Iran's oil. Israel has no natural resources of their own, and nobody in their right mind would ever go there as some sort of vacation hotspot. The beaches in Israel are nothing to write home about. Israel's war in Gaza has basically stalled out, and it bought them all kinds of problems with the international community. There's still scores of who knows how many Israelis being held as hostages by Hezbollah to this very day, and the IDF has been completely and thoroughly helpless in getting any of them back. It's been who knows how many months since they've had any recovered alive, and the families of the hostages are demanding that either Netanyahu makes a deal to get them back or he needs to step down. Benjamin Netanyahu is finding his neck back in the noose because now people are starting to say, well, gee, if the hostilities in Gaza are basically going nowhere at this point, maybe it's time to get back to talking about what we were beforehand, which was Benjamin Netanyahu's corruption trial, and how could the October 7th attack have even taken place right under his very nose? Those were the kind of whisperings and rumblings that were taking place the last couple of months. So now Benjamin Netanyahu needs a distraction, a big one. And going after Iran is exactly the kind of big, huge, noisy distraction that he needs. You see, there's a reason why the Israelis were so eager to get into Syria after Assad's regime fell. Of course, what nobody talks about is that was largely orchestrated by the U.S., or at least U.S.-backed forces. After Assad was ousted, the Israelis have been steadily sending so-called settlers into Syria. In reality, these are actually IDF soldiers. Their job is to occupy the Golan Heights. And they've also sent more soldiers to take as much territory as possible, even further than that. All of it, of course, under the guise of fighting terrorism. Even though the Assad regime is out of power, there are no terrorists or missiles or anything else coming out of Syria against Israel. And what about Syria's current so-called leaders, the one who overthrew Assad? Well, leaders, if they can be called that, what are they saying about Israel attacking their country, and about Israel taking their land, and bombing Iran, a fellow Muslim country? What are Syria's new so-called leaders saying about all this? Well, they're totally silent on it. All of it. They're not saying anything at all. The Israelis are bombing a country that's only a hop, skip, and a jump away from Syria, and these new leaders of Syria don't seem to be at all concerned about the fact that the Israelis are flying over their airspace, among other things. They just seem to be taking all of that lying down. The line that the first Zionists used back in the 1940s was that they were going to make the desert bloom. Well, the desert over there is still a desert to this day. Global opinion has been souring against them. Younger Jews in the U.S. are not gung-ho about trying to go over to Palestine and relive the Old Testament, and every successive younger generation of Americans is becoming less tolerant of sending billions of dollars to Israel when the roads in the U.S. look like the surface of the moon and nobody can afford to buy a house. If the Israelis can't find a way to snatch as much land from their neighbors as possible, and most importantly, get their hands on some natural resources that they will own and control, then their little experiment in Zionism is going to begin to wither on the vine in about another 20 years or so. That's when there's going to be serious pressure coming from in the United States to basically cut them off. It's only going to take a few politicians to be bold enough to run on that as a platform, and AIPAC can't stop all of them. There's not enough Zionist billionaires in the U.S. to keep Israel afloat, even if they were willing to donate their fortunes to Israel. So that's basically the Reader's Digest version of what's going on over there. This is a dust-up because Benjamin Netanyahu needs a political distraction, but the political distraction is meant to serve a very substantive cause, one that he and his pals have been pursuing for at least the last 35 or so years. And Donald Trump, of course, needs a distraction too. None of this is about anything that has to do with national security. This is all political security for a gang of corrupt kleptocrats. All right, so what does this have to do with black Americans? To put it bluntly, not much. Whoopi Goldberg decided that she would weigh in on this issue.
That's why I am saying that it is the same. Murdering someone for their difference is not good, whoever does it. It's not good. So that's why I said you weren't saying what I
What a surprise. Someone who said something about Israel's actions but that didn't get them fired or canceled by the white media. That's because she wasn't criticizing Netanyahu. That's the reason why. And no, we don't have a dog in this fight. And Whoopi Goldberg really should have shut up, but of course she didn't. And there's people who are outraged with her, outraged that she was comparing the plight of black Americans to Iran being bombed by Israel. There are people who are in their feelings about that. How could she? Oh, how terrible. Now look, while it is true that a lot of people consider Benjamin Netanyahu and his regime to be obnoxious, and what they're doing, say in Gaza and such, is considered to be large-scale bullying, to put it lightly, yeah, we can all agree on that. But we don't live over there, and nobody who's sitting there claiming that their heart goes out to Gaza, they're not going over there, so let's be adults here. There are people who absolutely cannot stand what Whoopi Goldberg said. But you know what? Her feckless sucking up aside, I agree with her. She did what every other group does whenever the subject of black Americans is raised. She downplayed, minimized, and sidestepped everybody else's issues and instead said black people are what we should be talking about here. Why? What black people have to endure is far worse. That's what everybody does to us. I can't be mad at her for prioritizing black people in this conversation, and you know what? I don't think anyone else should be either. Yes, it was not intentional on her part, clearly, and it is an example of a stopped clock being right twice a day, but in this case, I support this particular gaffe. I do not at all object with her saying that what black people have to deal with is worse than what's going on in Iran, though I would differ when she says that Iran is no more dangerous for the people there than it is being black in America, because being black in America is far, far more dangerous. While what's going on over there in Iran has nothing to do with black people, the idiots who are saying, oh, it's outrageous what she said, her comparison is wrong, being black is nothing like what the Israelis are doing to the Iranians right now. You can shut that down with a simple bit of math. How many people have died in Iran up to this point with this latest skirmish? How many people have died over there so far? Now, how many black Americans die every single year in this country as the result of police violence, as the result of inadequate medical care? Black Americans die in far, far higher numbers than anything going on over there. It's just that the killers in the United States don't use cruise missiles to do their killings. They're destroying people's homes and businesses, they say over there in Iran. And in Gaza, they're committing genocide and ethnic cleansing. No kidding. They're also destroying entire neighborhoods in the U.S., only they're black. They call it gentrification or urban renewal, but it's war, race war by another name, or as I put it, ethnic cleansing American style. That's what's happening right here. You don't have to go to the Middle East to find innocent groups of people who are being oppressed and obliterated. You got them right here at home. But you got a lot of chumps out there who have been taught to be desensitized to their own oppression and pain and to be hypersensitive to everyone else's. Now, what do you call someone who does that? You have some chumps out here who are angry about what Whoopi Goldberg said. Listen up, stupid. We have no friends. A lot of those same Iranians come to the U.S., they open businesses in black neighborhoods, and then treat us like every other anti-black racist does. These are not people who make common cause with us. My heart goes out to people who have allied themselves with me, not people who have decided to put distance between themselves and me. The squabbles that these people have in the Middle East are basically no more politically relevant than what the Irish and the English were brawling about in the 19th and 20th centuries. They'll be blowing each other up over there, and yet the moment that they set foot in the United States, suddenly they're chummy and best buds with those exact same people, because they can all take part in oppressing us. That's the unifying principle of white supremacy. And everybody who comes over here wants to be part of it. Hell, a lot of people who never set foot over here want to be part of it. None of these immigrant groups is opposed to oppression or brutality or even their favorite bit of psychological masturbation, class struggle. What they're really against is their place in the racial and political hierarchy. That's the thing they actually don't like. And when white power gives them a chance to upgrade, they forget all about whatever minor squabbles they may have had with thus and so, and they start spitting in black people's faces. They all immediately forget about whatever minor insignificant gripes that they had with one another, and they all get on code to be part of Team White Supremacy. So regardless of the source, in this case Whoopi Goldberg, who I agree with on practically nothing, the reality happens to be I'm not about to get out here and start waving the flag for anybody else. What she said was accurate. Sure, you can have your issues with the Israelis. I certainly am not a supporter of what they do, but the reality is the people over there in the Middle East have had decades to make inroads with the black community. They've had decades to build allies here, and they didn't do it because they didn't want to. They wanted to go it alone. Very well. This is what alone looks like. Especially after the uprisings of 2020, everybody around the world has no excuse for not immediately making a beeline to the United States and trying to find ways to lock arms with black Americans. Nobody has an excuse for not coming over here and doing that. Instead, everybody went right on back to the same old same-o. Sure, neither Benjamin Netanyahu nor the state of Israel is on the side of black Americans. And neither are the Arabs. Doesn't matter if they're in Palestine or Iran. Stop playing the fool and pretending that there's somebody to root for in this fight. I know a lot of you watch a lot of movies and TV, and there's a lot of people out there who have a very simplistic view of geopolitics, but the reality happens to be we have made it a point to stick up for everybody else. We've made it a point to be spokespeople for and advocates for everyone else, and everybody else decides that they're going to be independent agents. They're in business for themselves. And then when they get over here, next thing you know, they're making common cause with the very forces that we're fighting against. There's a reason why after Israel began to obliterate Gaza, you didn't see any of those Arab Muslim countries lifting a finger to help them. In fact, they didn't lift a finger or say a peep on their behalf. It was South Africa that had to go to the International Court of Justice and bring a case. Why didn't the Saudis bring that case? Why didn't the Jordanians bring that case? Why didn't the Egyptians bring that case? Why didn't the Syrians? Why didn't the Iranians? Hell, why didn't the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank bring the case? They could have, but they didn't. Instead, they all sat on their hands and decided to keep their mouths shut, and they waited until some black people got out there and took the slings and arrows first, till some black folks stepped across the line and took the blows. Then when they saw that it was safe enough for them to stick their heads out of the ground, then they decided, let's go ahead and step forward as if we were somehow on board from the very beginning. The exact same kind of dynamic that we find these emigres from these countries doing when they come to the United States. You don't find them sticking their heads up. They wait until black people do so, till black people make it safe for them to say something. Well, I don't know about you, but I've had enough of this one-way street. I find it very difficult to get a full head of steam about Whoopi Goldberg's ignorant mouth running on something when the reality is neither of the combatants in this case are on our side. And yes, when I look at what other people do when they talk about their issues, they make sure black people are not mentioned. And whenever black people have any attention brought to us, there's always somebody from one of these other groups who decides that they're going to try to hijack the proceedings and shoehorn themselves into the conversation. And now, for once, the shoe's on the other foot. No, I do not support Netanyahu at all, and I've already explained to you exactly what's going on here, so I hope that there's no hard heads who are going to try some last-ditch effort to say, well, shouldn't we be saying something? We should say something to the extent that the Iranians spoke up for us. They didn't have to wait until things got to this point. None of these other groups has to wait until it gets to this point. But the issue that they all have is they're all basically jockeying for and trying to use missiles and bombs and arms to petition for a higher place on the racial hierarchy ladder. And once they get that higher rung on the ladder, they use it to immediately begin dumping on us. That's the reality. That's what actually is happening. We can all have our issues with Whoopi Goldberg. God knows that I do. Even though she's not putting on the cape in this instance, we all know, dumb as she is, she'll have on the cape for somebody else next week, most likely immigrants, or whatever the pet issue of the left happens to be that's safe for these bootlicks to say a word or two about. But at least for the sake of this discussion and this moment in time, for the people who are whining about what she said, you can save it. Everybody who's ever come over here has practiced strict opportunism at our expense. And that being the case, as far as I'm concerned, why shouldn't we? Good evening, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Darren Nooks, Michael, Deep I-904, Gregory Franklin, and Jerlene Harris. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.